All right, welcome to the Basic Mixing course. The Basic Mixing course is comprised of 8 weeks of practical study in the art of mixing. Okay, and so when we get into what is the Basic Mixing course, this is a kind of streamlined version of the Master Mixing course. Many of you guys have signed up for already. And the idea is that this is the attention deficit disorder version of the Master Mixing course. I think when I created the Master Mixing course, it was highlighting a lot of things that I had discovered over the course of 20, 30 years of mixing records and working with people professionally. Some of the concepts are kind of hard to grasp, or they're maybe not necessarily hard to grasp conceptually. I think many people were able to understand what I was talking about, but to implement that, it's sort of like maybe asking somebody who's ridden a bike, and we've all ridden bikes and stuff in our life. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, let's go on the Tour de France, and running the Tour de France, and you're just a mess. It just you realize that it's okay, you don't really have necessarily those capabilities or the ears or the tuning or whatever it takes to kind of make it all happen. So what I really decided, and I've been dreaming this up for a while, I've been really working on this for a while, how to organize this. Whether to strip down the Master Mixing course, whether to start all new and have like a basic, intermediate, advanced course, which I still may do. I think when I'm actually finished with this, I will be rebuilding the Master Mixing course, so it kind of works a little bit more in conjunction with the Basic Mixing course. So I kind of want to see how this plays out initially. But the same structure will be in place. It will be a step-by-step process. There will be concepts that I will talk about, and the individual videos in the lessons will be very similar. So if you go actually over to the page here, the main page that is on the description, so this is just the actual MPG online course description that everybody sees. And then here I would have what you would link to, which is basically, it's very similar. It just gives you instructions for what to do. And then links. So you'll have a link here, which will be class 1 recording. And then you'll have, what is mixing. And if you go there, there'll be a short audio or video program that'll probably be, on the order of like, 10 to 15 minutes that kind of go over that concept of what is mixing, just to give you an overall approach, the visual approach to mixing, speaker placement, right? So I'll get a bit into how you set up your studio and design, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all the courses will be kind of laid out accordingly. So this is similar in that with the Master Mixing course, you have basically 5 lessons. But in the Master Mixing course, some of those lessons, especially early on in the early weeks, are hours of audio, and some of them have 5, 6, 7 videos on them. And so really what I want to be doing in terms of the live classes is taking the exact same multi-track song that you guys will be downloading, which is the bonus multi-track download here. You will download that, and then you will be able to open that up in your application. I will probably do it in Pro Tools. I may do it in Logic. I haven't decided that yet. But you could take it and open up in your application and then kind of follow along to what I do. So as you see that I do things, then you can open up, the same plugins or similar plugins and try to accomplish the same types of sounds and kind of work with it. And you can kind of see the approach and go at it step by step. And that way you can at least, even if it's a little bit along the lines of, what is that game called? Simon Says, right? Where I just say, Simon says, subtractive EQ. Or Mixing with Mike says, subtractive EQ. And then you just kind of go there. It'll be kind of along those lines, right? So, that'll be the kind of basic line. You kind of follow along with that. So the thing about this principle that I think is very important is that I've worked with people privately with many different kinds of music. And this process works for any style of music. So it doesn't matter if you're doing hip hop, if you're doing rock, if you're doing classical music, if you're doing piano, vocal songs, the concepts don't change, right? So these are fundamental principles of mixing that just kind of work. Now, you may apply certain elements of those principles more in certain situations than in others, and that's just an experience thing or something that you kind of have to work through as you go through the process or get the process kind of kicked off and started, in terms of the mixing. So, from that perspective, I think, this process will follow with basically anything that you're doing. And then, and that is part of why I have the mixing with Mike course, or the mixing with Mike classes, because then as you run across situations where things don't work, you can send it to me and say, why does it work, right? And cry and all the other stuff. And then, then we can work out those things, right? And get to all of that stuff, right? So a part of the basic mixing course and master mixing course automatically ties you into mixing with Mike. So mixing is all tied together. So if you're signed up for if you're an all access member, you're signed up for the mixing with Mike membership or the basic mixing course or master mixing course, then you have access to all the mixing with Mike stuff. And that is my forum to help you guys out along with your mixing, right? And that's the basic idea. So, all right. So that's it for what is the basic mixing course? Next is who is the basic mixing course for? The idea here is that I designed this for people who are busy. I think one of the things that I found, even working with students privately, I have some students that I work with regularly privately, and I help them out with their mixing one-on-one on sessions. Usually I do it through the same Start Meeting software that's available for you guys. If you're interested, you get a discount if you're a member of the school. And in those private lessons, I often feed them off to the individual videos of the master mixing course. And so I don't always get the consistency that I think I'd like to see in terms of them watching all the videos. So when they come back and they send something to me and they're not doing something that's a very basic principle of what I've talked about, I realize that it's because they can't sit there through, 6 hours of video about the all the intricate details of the 3D sound field. And so with this, I really want to really drill in the fundamental concepts. And if you really kind of understand those, then it's more digestible, right? You're not overwhelmed with stuff. So this works well for busy people who have, lives. They have another job, or you're just busy, you have family, children, other things that you need to deal with. And so for some, this is kind of a hobby. It's something that they do on the side. For many, it's things that people are pursuing professionally, right? Many of my private students, or several of my private students right now, are actually making really good connections in the music industry and working with people who have professional connections to record companies, major record labels, and getting work out there. And so what I'm doing is working with them. And so, Chris, you're not ready to quit your day job yet, but work with me and you'll be right there. I'll get you right there. So, step at a time. So there's that. So then there's a little bit, I threw the ADD in thing because I think it's such a big thing. I think that, and I'm not sure if ADD is really the right thing because I don't think everybody has attention deficit disorder, but I think there are actually more things to take your attention than there ever have been, particularly with mobile phones and media and iPads and stuff. So, you go anywhere and people are walking down the street looking at their iPhone, checking their email, logging onto a website, watching YouTube videos. In coffee shops, people gather around, they sit down at a table and they're all text messaging their friends about the fact that they're with instead of being with their friends, right? And so Facebook and all that sort of stuff. And that's fine, that's cool. I think in some ways it's a medium that allows people to communicate in a way they never could before. But I think on another level, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of downtime, a little shutdown time. And that's the reality of modern life. So rather than build a course for people who are maybe, independently wealthy or don't have to work or are sitting at home all day, picking their nose, wondering what the hell they want to do and why their mixes suck, and they just have all day to go through all these things, I'm really building this course for people who are, want to work at it and they want to do it, but want to do it in a more efficient way. Give me what I need to go. Get me started here. Really jumpstart what I'm doing here, so that as I kind of move forward with my mixing and this, the basic concepts are in line, and I can see immediate results in terms of what I'm doing and currently how I'm changing it, and see the progression as it goes forward. And that's really my goal for this, is to make it that way. Now, the other one is the frustrated mixer. Honestly, mixing of all the engineering skills is, to me, hands down the most difficult, because there are so many variables, and I think there's really so little approach it and to do the process. And this is part of really my motivation to do Mixing with Mike. And so, the school now to this point has been running, over a year. Right. And over that time, the very first course that I started a year ago, a little over a year ago, was the Master Mixing course. And I have since put it on 3 times. And through all of that, and in working with people, I realized that there are more streamlined ways to describe many of the things that I've talked about. And as I continue to work and mix and do things, I find that there are things that I come across that it's like, oh yeah, I've always done that. Why didn't I include that in the course? Or why didn't I include this? And so this is really the amalgamation of all of that stuff, really simplified to kind of bring it in. So I think what I find most with people is, particularly artists or people who are not full-time engineers, they're very frustrated with their mixing. And even people who have been mixing for years have frustrations about their inability to get like certain sounds or get certain things happening. And this is a course that will really kind of help to steer the ship in the right direction. And then once you kind of get through those major blockages and you kind of have a formulated process that will work, right? When I set up this process of levels and panning, checking your phase, subtractive EQ, compression, shaping the mix, effects, and I go through this in this very particular order, there's reason that I do that, because it works, right? It's a process that you can fundamentally kind of go through and really get results, okay? And then you can start to tweak it. So as you kind of get used to it and you do more and more and you keep applying it, you realize, hey, I moved this here by accident and it sounds better. That's really cool. And you learn something. Or you stumble across a preset that's not talked about, or a different approach to something. You say, wow, this is really cool. This makes sense. And then you can kind of build off of a foundation. And I think what a lot of people do, and especially when I see things, is that they don't understand some of the basic principles, like the signal flow of the mixing. What you actually do with the sound, right? How you set up your speakers, tune your speakers. Just some very basic things that put you in a compromised position before you even begin. See, to me, most of the really good mix engineers that I've worked with were all musicians at some point. They were all producers. They were all connected with music in some way other than, like just being a fan of music. The vast majority of them. I'm a guitar player, right? Well, I say that very loosely. I'm a hack guitar player because I do most of my stuff, I do mostly engineering work, but I have a full music education. And so the ability, that knowledge really helps tremendously, because there is a sensitivity to musicianship that's so important. I mean, you're mixing music, right? So obviously if you're insensitive to what a vocalist has to go through to hit a certain note, then you're just going to be, what's wrong with you? Hit it, and you'll be like slamming and beating them up with pitch correction and stuff like that unnecessarily. And so that's an important thing as an engineer to really understand. So when you get to the mixing stage, then you're left to deal with all of the things that didn't go right. There's a joke in the it's sort of a cascading joke that goes, through recording and professional recording. And it's like when you do the tracking session and you got a good take, a decent take, but not really the one that you wanted, you'd say, oh, we'll fix it in the overdubs. And then you start layering on all kinds of keyboards and synths and samples and loops and all kinds of stuff. And it's still not exactly right. So you say, oh, we'll fix it in the mix. And then you get to the mix and the mix engineer does whatever they can with it and they try to stir up whatever magic they can. And it's like, okay, it's not exactly what you wanted. We'll fix it in the mastering. And then, the mastering engineer crushes it and does whatever they can, and there's no place left to go, right? And I think there's actually a famous quote from Frank Zappa, which in a mastering session, I think he famously said, we'll fix it in the shrink wrap, which is, whatever, it's funny. But so it's there for that person. And also for someone who's looking for a fresh approach, maybe someone who's been mixing for a while, but they kind of do the same thing over and over again. And they're looking for some new ideas and a new approach to the way that they're working. So this is just as valid for people who've been mixing for years and years and years, as well as for people who have been mixing for a short period of time. So I've had people come to me that I've known for 20 years, and they've been engineering and they've been mixing records, and they tune in to the mastering mixing course and the mixing with Mike videos, and they watch this stuff, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. That really taught me something that I didn't know. It's something that never really stops. You never stop learning. And so any chance that you get to kind of take on a fresh approach to everything is really great. There are certain things that I don't get into in this mixing course that are supplemented in the Mixing with Mike course, and I think that's really important when you get into that. And I call it Mixing with Mike course. It's not really that. It's my reality online mixing show, I guess is what I call it, because it's all episodes, right? So reality mixing. I don't know. Is there any way to do it unreal? But whatever. Anyway. And so I do the mix mapping, and I think that's such an important thing because it speaks volumes about how you approach things, right? You have to know what your destination is in order to plot out what a path is, right? So you see, something great about Montreal, and you read all this stuff about Montreal. It's like, well, how do you get there, right? You have to build a map for how to get to Montreal, right? And so, you get the Google map, and now it's easy, right? Or you whip out your phone, you open up the map, and you say directions to, and then you figure out how to get there. But and that's kind of what this is in a way, right? And the mix mapping is, if you follow along with that, or you sign up for the master mixing course and you get into that, then what you'll see is that, the more you start to make it conscious in your head what's going on, the better your mixing chops are going to get, right? You'll start to see more immediate results because you'll have a destination in mind. You'll say, I want this. How did they do that? And then at least when you try things and you say, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. When you finally get it, you're like, you really learned something, right? You really, really learned something. So that's an important part. It's like the best form of ear training. I'm not a big fan of those ear training things where they go through frequencies and you sweep frequencies and can I hear this frequency and blah, 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 and where is this panned and all that sort of stuff. That stuff is fine, right? But it doesn't teach you engineering. It instructs you about what the different frequency ranges are and what they do. And we talk about those things, right? So that's a big part of the course.